on this panel is Jennifer Jones Morales. She's also a PhD. Actually, I forgot. Alistair asked me when I gave you the 2 minutes why I was being so nice to you. He says, she already gave you a PhD. Why are you being so nice? So I told her, I want to keep the door open in case I decide to do another one. Right. So Jennifer is also a PhD candidate at UWI in human resource management. She's a national officer with the ILO, so that's great to have her on board on this panel. And most of her work is in the area of gender and authentic leadership. And I'm at the business school at Arthur Lockjack, and authentic leadership is really huge on our agenda. So I have a personal interest in seeing what.
Thanks. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, let me say it's a pleasure for me to be here as the odd person out on the panel, given that I hail from the Management Studies Department, and I'm sharing a stage with a lot of esteemed economists in Trinidad and Tobago. But I want to say that I'm very, very honored that the chair and the co-chair of the conference invited me to participate in this conference, which is honoring Professor Carl Theodore at this time. I want to say that because I have known Professor Theodore for longer than I want to admit. But more than that, the other evening when a tribute was being paid to him, one of the threads that came through quite clearly is that he's a man of unwavering integrity. And in this light, I want to position and contextualize the work I'm doing. I could not ask for a better segue into the presentation for those of you who would have been here before who heard Sir George's clarion call that when you're talking about health and sustainable development, there's a need to have a gendered perspective. So against this backdrop, I'm going to present the presentation, Does Gender Disparity Exist in Authentic Leadership Ascendance in Caribbean Business Sector? And it's a set of lessons from a mixed method study on Caribbean female and male leaders. The agenda is quite straightforward. I'm going to present an introduction and background, a definition of authentic leadership, some hypotheses, just two for the purposes of the presentation, go into methodology, some findings, a little discussion, and finally the contribution that this study should be making to the extant research. So, the introduction. Well, there are still systemic barriers, ladies and gentlemen, that exist for women in the workplace, in leadership, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but also in the rest of the world. I did an elite study, elite interviewing, and against that backdrop, I wanted to point out that a number of women are now assuming elite positions in organizations, and therefore only very recently we could have had meaningful study on the predictors and outcomes of their presence. And finally, to highlight the fact that it was very challenging at times to get data from elites, because while they may be very visible, they are highly inaccessible. So what is the definition of authentic leadership? For the purposes of this study, as the chair said, authentic leadership is kind of like the flavor of the month these days. It's fairly new, just about a decade old. 2005 came into be in high prominence by Luthans. And the definition is that it is a pattern of leader behavior that draws upon and promotes both positive psychological capacities and a positive ethical climate to foster greater self-awareness and internalize moral perspective, balanced processing of information, and relational transparency on the part of leaders working with followers, fostering positive self-development. And this is the definition from Olumba et al. In their study in 2008. Now, basically, there are four components of authentic leadership, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, it's self-awareness, which is a deep understanding of one's values and identities, emotion, goals, and motives. And the bottom line is that you have to know yourself, so that the authentic leadership literature borrows very strongly from Shakespeare's "To thine own self be true." You really have to know yourself and be in tune with yourself. Secondly, it's balance processing. This is about having the required information to make good decisions. But it also points to the fact that you want to incorporate as broad-based a set of determinants in coming to decision making. Thirdly, it's about relational transparency and self-regulation, and that is that you're presenting your true self. So the Jennifer who you all will know in the workplace is the same Jennifer at home, is the same Jennifer that somebody who would have met me in some part of the world would know me to be. Fourthly, a moral perspective is germane to the concept of authentic leadership. And here we talk about having a very genuine moral, ethical perspective. And this is why I'm so happy, again, to place the study at this time, because, as I said before, Professor Theodore is known for his unwavering integrity, because you have to have a perspective that keeps you to true north. Your moral compass would be true north in the literature. There are a few other components of authentic leadership, but just the one I want to highlight finally is that you must be into follower development, okay? So the two hypotheses I want to present this morning are that the Authentic Leadership Questionnaire, which has been in fact been developed by Walumba et al. In 2008, shows convergent validity in the Caribbean as it has shown in the United States, China, and Kenya. And the second hypothesis is that there are, in fact, differences in authentic leadership ascendance in Caribbean business sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I opted to do a mixed method study for my dissertation, the reason being that it is, as Hesse Biber says, and Johnson 2013, it's coming from things differently. So you have a kind of holistic approach and comprehensive approach to the study once there's convergence, of course. So mixed methods approach involves both a quantitative and a qualitative set of viewpoints, data collection, analysis, and inference techniques. And the major proponents of the mixed methodology are Tedley and Takakori of 2009. And there are, in fact, a lot of advantages of meteorological eclecticism, according to Kashi and Tedley 2010, namely the triangulation, complementarity, integration, transformation, and iteration. So just to talk a little bit about the ALQ, or the Authentic Leadership Questionnaire, it's a 16-item instrument where you are allowed to evaluate both yourself and your leader. So there's a self-leadership and there's a sub-leadership aspect to it. Just to say that I did try to keep the parts of the study, in other words, the number, the sample size, try to go a little higher and try to keep it within what was actually done in the United States, China, and Kenya. Just to show you the numbers, 248 I did, as opposed to 224 and 212 that were done in United States and China, respectively. With respect to the average age, I sort of did by age groups, but I want to say thanks to Mr. Martin Franklin, who pointed out to me that I could get a better read of central tendency. I did some number juggling, and the average age for my group was 37 with a standard deviation of 11.3. The mean work experience just in between, 15.4, just a little bit more than United States and China. Standard deviation, just a little bit more. But I think in terms of the gender balance and the education, I was more or less on point. Want to say something that was also a little bit different. In the United States and China, they focused mainly on high-tech industries and high-tech companies, but I had a wider range in that I used a lot of university students from both, well, not both, all three campuses, that is Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago, and as well as leaders from these countries. So what happened? In running this study, I bounced up a little bit of a snag, and that was that when I ran the figures in SPSS, well, I saw that the degrees of freedom were not the same as in the original study of Walumba et al. And that caused me a bit of a problem and certainly a lot of anxiety. But just to say this, ladies and gentlemen, I contacted Professor Walumba in 2014, and I asked him, I said, did you use covariances and correlated measurement errors, and he did say yes, he did. According to studies by Gerbing, and Anderson in 1984, you couldn't make allowances for using correlated error measurement errors. And so I was able to use two different covariances, and I managed to get a little better reading, a little better model fit. But just to point out that in my case, the second order factor model had a better fit than the first order model factor, which was quite different to the China and the United States examples. So that takes part of the quantitative aspect of the study. With respect to the qualitative study, as I said before, I did some elite interviewing. And elite interviewing is, as I said, relatively new as well, because you have to have a long lead time to get in contact with some of these people. These are really the moguls and the mavens and all the nice words you want to say, the captains of industry and so. And it was a little bit difficult at times, running at least 6 months in some cases, to get people to participate who qualified with what elite interviewing is all about. Nonetheless, I was very heartened by the fact that even though I had set out to interview 60 people, 20 in each island, I got a lot of traction once I started, and I managed to, in the end, get 78 men and women, most of them coming from Jamaica, but fairly good balance within all 3 countries. In all of this, I managed to get 5 ultra elites, and these are the real creme de la creme. And according to Zuckerman, these are people who, they're, blow it through the window. So I had 3 men who have been knighted. They're from Barbados. But one Trinidadian, I want to say, who is a good and known acquaintance of Warren Buffett, for those of you who know things about finance and so in the US. And he has been described as being able to be one of the richest men in America if he were an American. So that's to tell you how big in the dance, as they say, he is. The cross-section of industry, consultancy, banking, automotive, manufacturing, food production, retail, and insurance. And the study took place between February 2013 and April 2014. The study was really a life histories approach, so there was a lot of narrativization. So I looked at 5 different tiers of people's lives, their childhood, secondary school, tertiary education. Most of them had early career and present career. And there were lots of similarities between them, but I wanted to just articulate a few of them, in that most of them had mentors when they were in primary school. Most of them, they had intellectual prowess. They were seen as bright, and that is why people took them up under their wings. So regardless, and just piggyback on what Dr. Altier was saying, it had nothing to do with their socioeconomic circumstance, but simply that they were bright and somebody took them under their wings. The other thing is that they were educated both here in the region and abroad. So there was also no significant difference when they went to the workplace. They developed relationships with people, and they had mentors and so. In terms of their core values, both men and women, their core values came from their family or religion or life experiences. In terms of the awareness of authentic leadership, most of them, they were not aware of authentic leadership as a construct, but most of them were in fact practicing authentic leadership or possessed the components of authentic leadership. In terms of their life, a lot of them had high points, which I call the zenith, and low points, which I call the nadirs. Okay, and finally, that I looked at the whole issue of eudaimonia and giving back, and both men and women, they were giving back at the level of person to person, which I coined individuation, and they were giving back at the community level as well. So there were lots of similarities there. But this is about understanding the differences, and I have 1 minute. And the main differences were as follows: that the women had mentors from an earlier age, that the men pursued their undergraduate education in the Caribbean region, but most of them went out to do their postgraduate education abroad. Key to this study is that women assume their leadership positions 2 years older than men. And in particular, it was as high as 3 years difference between when they assume leadership. Sixthly, that women experience gender discrimination in the workplace still in 2015, 2014, 2015, that their core values are a little bit different in terms of integrity, honesty, and respect, and that the men sort of viewed their low points as a different thing, you know. It gave them more resilience. They kind of got up, dusted off their pants, and then moved on, whereas the women kind of saw, oh, this was, you know, a bad patch in my life, okay? And more men gave back at the national level. There was, in fact, conversions of both methods, and finally, I wanted to say that the contribution of this study is the following: that they are facilitating factors and strategies for overcoming the gender barriers, that we got an opportunity to look at the processes of leader and leadership development, and here in the leadership development, I developed a metaphorization known as the goal production process, which I couldn't deal with in this presentation. I got the opportunity to understand how gender affects leadership and leadership development in developing countries. I understand a little bit better the early life experiences of female leaders and the uniqueness of elite interviewing and researching up, and finally understanding the pathways in the developing countries scenario, and this would be the major contribution of this study. So ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you for your indulgence and